So the one thing that I love about artists from the 60s and 70s is that they are churning out quite a lot of live performances because they really haven't put out all that new material. Although with this particular artist, that can't really be said. Let's dive into this latest live recording. Wuthering Nights live in Birmingham by Steve Hackett. So Steve Hackett, ex-guitarist for Genesis, has been pumping out a lot of these guys for the past couple of years. Ever since he's done that, Genesis Revisited, we had quite a number of these live performances, like the first one that was recorded in Hammersmith, the next one that was recorded in Royal Albert Hall, 2013, 2014 respectively. Then we have the Total Experience live in Liverpool, released in 2016, which followed his Wolflight record. And then we finally have this guy, which was released right after the Night Siren. Now, the way that this guy was marketed, at least within the tour, was that it was going to heavily focus on his work with Genesis within the Wind and Wuthering system. And so because of that, the second half of this album has a number of tracks from that. But the first little bit has a lot of his solo stuff. I like how the beginning really starts off with a great kind of slab of new material and older material within his solo career. It starts off with Everyday from Spectral Mornings. Even though I kind of like Spectral Mornings just a little bit more than Everyday, I find like Everyday is a really great kicking off point, which leads us right into El Nino from the latest album, and then it goes into Steps, his 1980 release of The Defactor, and then we have a number of those new releases again with The Skeleton in the Gallery, Behind the Smoke. The Serpentine song was really interesting, and Arise Again from The Watcher. Really great kind of blending of the older and newer tracks. And of course it wouldn't be a live performance without the staple song of Shadow of the Hierophant. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the drawbacks to this album because overall I was a little bit disappointed with this live release. The main reason here is actually the drumming. And it's not that Gary O'Toole, the main drummer on here, is a bad drummer. It's just I feel like he wasn't quite directed properly. And this is found within two tracks specifically. The Shadow of the Hierophant, which I'm going to be talking about now, and One for the Vine, the one that I'm going to be talking about right after that. And it's for two very different reasons, which is why I think it's the direction that he was given and not necessarily his skill. Within A Shadow of the Hierophant, when we get into the final crescendo, that final just beast of the track, he kind of goes over the top at a certain sense and really starts to miss the beat, and it never really comes together as a whole. Like, I don't mind if you go crazy and over the top during Shadow of the Hierophant, but it needs to come together at that end. It really needs to hammer it home properly on a punctuation. From Shadow of the Hierophant, we go straight into the tracks that we found within Wind and Wuthering. And it's kind of a best of. Like, there are a few songs that are left off of this from Wind and Wuthering, but it does start with 11th Earl of Mar, goes straight into One for the Vine, then goes into Blood on the Rooftops, In That Quiet Earth, and finally Afterglow. 11th Earl of Mar was a very great rendition. I really don't have any complaints on that one. Very beautifully executed and very beautifully done. I love the little bit of an extra oomph that the boys provide within this presentation here.
It's a band of light across your eyes.
And it's one of the few times that we actually heard 11th Earl of Mar live. I mean, it was very vacant within Seconds Out. And some of the subsequent Genesis live releases, it wasn't really found on there as well. So I like the fact that they were able to do a live recording of this here. Now, One for the Vine has been done a couple of times on live recordings. I've seen them on Genesis live recordings with Steven not present with the band, so I'm glad to see that he was here within it. Now, here's the one issue that I have, and it comes back to that drumming section. I was very excited about this because I love the drumming session when we come into the main bridge of the song, that main jam playout. And I was really hoping for some really nice flourishes, some really nice over the top, because the band leaves such great space for that to happen. And this is found on all of the live recordings that we have when Phil Collins and Chester Thompson are on the drums within Genesis. And I was really excited to see what the boys that were following Steve were going to do. And unfortunately, O'Toole doesn't do anything. He just pulls that simple 4/4 time and doesn't do anything with it. And it boggles my mind about why this occurred, because it isn't needed. Like, this is that style that I was hoping for Shadow of the Horfant, where I was hoping for a little bit more of a subdued style that would then explode, that would then come back to a subdued. But here we just have a subdued play style that doesn't lead us anywhere. So that was a little bit of a sad times, a little bit of a and unfortunately we skip a number of really tasty treats that we had from Wind and Wuthering. And I know they're not prominently Steve's songs, but still, I was really hoping to hear some What Gorilla as well as All in a Mouse's Night, because those two tracks are really tasty, and I was so looking forward to hearing them done live. And they're vacant on here. Instead, we already have a song that Steve has done a number of times, Blood on the Rooftop, which makes sense because that is his track. It's one of his few contributions to Wind and Wuthering. And it's weird that it goes straight into In That Quiet Earth instead of having that little bit of a prelude that we had within Unquiet Slumbers for the Sleepers, because I feel like that's the perfect little bit of a curtain opening up for the grand finale of those three tracks. Afterglow doesn't really do much for me on this live recording. Like, I have this kind of perfect idea of how Afterglow should sound live, and they did it once, and I have a bootleg version of it, and it was when it transfers from In That Quiet Earth into Afterglow, where they used that really powerful ending of In That Quiet Earth and just continued to ramp it up into that final note that we had within Afterglow, and they kept it there. From there, we get more of what we've already had with Steve Hackett. A lot of his other live performances end with these Dance on a Volcano, Los Endos, Firth of Fifth, Musical Box. I am kind of glad to see that Inside and Out is on there, because, again, we don't really see too much of Inside and Out, but again, we've already heard a lot of those Musical Box and Firth of Fifth, Los Endos and Dance on a Volcano, and they don't really do too much here. I wish that because we've already had like at least 4 or 5 live performances that we've already had with these guys, that they would have done a little bit more within Wind and Wuthering and songs that we hadn't already heard, like more of the Inside and Out, maybe even Spot the Pigeon that he was involved with, or even like other tracks that we had from Trick of the Tail, like the title track of Trick in the Tail, maybe even Mad Mad Moon, because we haven't heard Mad Mad Moon live before, and I thought that would have been a perfect addition to this overall box. So overall, this was a little bit of a disappointment when we've already had so many outstanding live performances. And it's really for that reason I have to say skip this album. This is an album that I normally wouldn't say skip, but because he's done so many better works up to this point in a live album, definitely skip it. But what are your thoughts about this? I really needed to get this out, mainly because the drumming of O'Toole, he's a great drummer, but I felt like he wasn't quite utilized. As well as some of the song selections on here. I think they had a great idea and a great concept, and it wasn't quite executed properly or to its fullest. But again, what did you guys think? Did you love this? Did you hate it? Let me know of your own by commenting down below. And also, what is your favorite live recording from Steve Hackett? Let me know of that by also commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.